The first question was, how did I get to this level with my accent? And basically, the story starts when I was 14 years old, about to be 15. And at that time, the way that I was reading and writing in English were kind of decent, but when it came to talking in English, I was really bad, like really, really bad. And I wanted to get better, and so I thought that what do I do to get better? And then I basically thought that, you know what, we're gonna sit down in my computer, I'm gonna press the record button, and we're just gonna record this. We're gonna start this, episode series where every day I come in my computer, record a new episode for like 12 minutes, and I talk about anything I want to talk about, and that's supposed to improve the way that I talk in English. And it did improve me. Like for months I was doing that, and I had gotten really good from the point I started. But
Okay, I'm just going to stop it here. That is such a good idea. And actually, I think that's what I'm going to do in my French. I think there's something very powerful about recording yourself speaking your target language. So if it's English and doing it every day, this will help you, one, practice, and then two, see the progress. And then it also helps you to listen back so you can hear the different mistakes. So I'm going to continue playing and see what else he has to share.
then basically after like some time I was like, well, I sound a little bit weird because a part of me, well, a major part of me sounds Indian, and I still had like an Indian accent, but then this other part of me really didn't sound Indian. And it was, to me at that time, I really couldn't identify whether it was American, British, or blah 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 anything, but it was certainly not Indian. And then I was like, how did I get it? But now looking
I'm sorry, I just realized I was playing it on 1.5 speed.
at it, back at it, I think I used to consume a lot of Western content, ever since I was a child. And I think my brain kind of internalized a lot of those sounds and started to subconsciously incorporate it. And then I was basically in between both of these things, and I really didn't like the way that I communicated.
Okay, so I love that he mentioned this. So I mentioned it just before he said it. I forgot what he had said as I was commenting. When you record yourself and you listen back, you'll start to be able to hear, I hear influence from my native language. And then I also hear things that I'm doing well. So that helps give you that feedback. But you will get to a point, like he had mentioned here. I don't know if I sound British or American or Indian. There are some you'll get to a point where you're like, I don't know what I need to correct. Okay. So I love that he shared that he got to that point because that is something that I tell a lot of my followers. This will happen to you. And this is where I am in French. There's some things that I'm like, I just want to know, why do I not sound native? That's when you need a native speaker, like an accent coach, to help you with that.
And then I thought that, you know what, I'm going to pick the American accent and I'm going to start learning it. And I'm trying to kind of make things proper. And this is how I started. And I obviously, did this. Now let's move on to the main question, which is how I actually did it. And that was by basically at the start, I was mimicking a lot of native speakers. I was trying to, mimic their rhythm, their intonation, the way they communicated, the pronunciations, and everything. And this is how I started. I was doing it. And when I stumbled across certain sounds that I just couldn't top, for example, like what do you call this, the glottality in the words like button, certain, and stuff like that. With this sound, it was so problematic for me that I just couldn't like hear it, and I couldn't replicate it. It was impossible.
Okay, I love that he talked about this. You will find this too as you have like your accent and then the accent you want. There's going to be differences. If there are new sounds, it's very possible that you will not be able to hear the sound or the differences. For example, between bus and boss, a lot of Spanish speakers cannot hear the difference. Did you take the bus or did you talk to your boss? Okay? The boss is like your, the person who is like your patron in Spanish. And then bus is like the vehicle that you ride in. Um, so I really like that he mentioned that. So when you target a sound, you have to learn how to be able to hear it before you start to be able to pronounce it. So I love that he mentioned this.
And then I went on to YouTube and I typed it out, and then I found out a proper video of how do you say it, and then I tried it, and then definitely was able to do it after some practice. And this has basically been my routine, shadowing and then seeing if there are certain sounds I can do. And if there aren't, then I go onto YouTube, I type it out, and then I incorporate it, get better at it, and just improve the way that I talk.
Okay, that I really liked. Um, and I'm gonna mention shadowing. I didn't really explain what shadowing is. I have playlists where you could shadow me, but it's basically when you listen to a native speaker. And when you're listening to a native speaker, you will repeat just like they said it, almost like a parrot, like the bird does, where you listen, you repeat. And I mentioned this in my last live, so I'll actually put this up right now. When you're shadowing, it's really helpful and efficient to have a specific goal when you're shadowing. So you can have a specific sound, a specific pattern or phenomenon that you are listening for. So, for example, with Arush, maybe he had a time where he really struggled with the glottal stop. Um, where instead of saying button, he said button, button, right? So he would listen for the, I'd imagine he'd be listening for words and sentences with the glottal stop. And yeah, repeating after the native speaker, but also listening and paying special attention to that sound. So something to notice. And I like how he says he does it repetitively. That's important. It needs to become a habit and like you need to be able to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it until it becomes muscle memory. Of course, getting feedback to make sure that you are pronouncing it correctly, because if not, you are creating bad pronunciation habits. But let's listen to what else he says.
Now, let's move on to the other question, which is, did I do it alone? Yes, I mostly did it alone for the most part. And the other question, which is, what tips and techniques did you use? I think I've talked about it, but basically, it's just a lot of repetition. And I also, by the way, I just consume a lot of English content. And it's that I'm passively listening for things and I'm always trying to get better. I swear to God, there hasn't been a single day where obviously there are days that I was not able to practice, but there wasn't a single day that I was not passively, trying to improve the way that I talk. So
Wow, that's dedication. So when people say, "Oh, well, I don't live in an English-speaking country," that's not an excuse. This guy does not live in United States or Canada, and we have the internet, right? The internet is so helpful. Um, That is amazing. That is actually really amazing. And what I mentioned in my last video when I talked about 5 or 6 ways to maximize your accent training, your American accent training, I did mention make sure you are constantly getting input from like input in English with the accent that you want. So if it means listening to YouTube with American speakers or, listening to music or the radio in English with the accent that you want. With the accent, this is very important. With the accent that you want, your brain will start to be able to hear and identify and recognize those sounds so that you'll be able to incorporate it into your speech with practice. So I love that he mentions that he listens to it. He gets that constant input of American English.
it's just you just do a lot of repetition and you just get better. And the other question, for me at least, this is what worked. The other question was, what advice would you give to someone wanting an American accent? And I think the advice is to just be consistent and just realize that it's just certain habits that you have to learn and certain habits that you have to unlearn. And if you do both of these things, you're gonna sound American or whatever way you want to sound. It's just a game about incorporating and just deleting certain habits, and it's just about that. What challenges did you have as an Indian speaker? So I really can't think about. I do have a lot of challenges, but this thing is going to be too long. So I'm going to give some things that just come on top of my head, which is the biggest challenge I kind of had to go through was that in the space, not a lot of people talk about that. If you're learning a new accent from scratch, you're gonna feel a lot unnatural and a lot weird and a lot not like yourself, in other words, fake. And I really felt that in the beginning. I really didn't have like.
And we don't really say uh, a lot weird. We say very weird, very unnatural. Just a little side tip. Because I noticed that there are still some, because I know he wanted feedback. I know that there's some little word choices that you make that I'm like, "Oh, that doesn't sound natural." So I should have brought it up earlier. For example, like deleting habits, like getting rid of habits, getting rid of bad habits instead of deleting. Deleting is more like if you are on a computer and you're deleting files, just so that you know. Yeah, I don't know if you can even say that for real life. Usually I'm thinking technology. We delete an application on your phone. We delete photos, right? Yeah.
Some sort of an anchor point, which was like, I knew that this is supposed to be the way, this is how you're supposed to feel it. And so that was really, at that time, really, de-
Okay, I know you talked about the anchor point. I don't know if this is what you're referring to, but I'm going to share this as a tip. Sometimes it's good to have what I call and what my teacher calls an anchor phrase. So sometimes when you want to get into that American mood, that American accent, if you have a go-to phrase that you've mastered, it can help you refeel the sounds, refeel what it feels like to speak American. So if your phrase is like, "Hey, how's it going?" Right? Then that could be your phrase, right? Um, having a phrase that whenever you're like, "Oh, I just want to be able to feel what it's like to have an American accent so that I can continue speaking it." Find yourself an anchor phrase, a go-to phrase. And if you have one, comment it. I want to know what your anchor phrase is. I don't think that's what he's referring to, but that's what I thought about. Or your like go-to phrase.
motivating, and I really hated that. But eventually I got into realize that it's just habits and patterns. And when you try to learn new habits and patterns, it feels a little unnatural. But if you do it for a long time horizon, it starts to become natural. And this is how you get better and stuff. And yep, this I believe I've answered all of the questions to the best of my abilities. And signing out, just yeah, thank you.
All right. So thank you, Arush. I love that you shared this. I'm going to add some extra things as I'm thinking about it. Um, okay, I'm just going to see if there's anything else that he wants to add. Okay. I asked him a question about saying, I'd love to know. I talked about what challenges did you have as an Indian speaker, and I think he answered it as well in text. Oh, he said, I was running out of time, so I couldn't really answer it properly. But if I had to sum up one key thing I've noticed through both practice and observation is this. In the Indian accent, consonants often aren't enunciated with much force or clarity. Oh, okay. I like that. I like that. The best way I can put it is you kind of have to spit out the consonants with more energy. That shift made a big difference for me. So if you're an Indian speaker and that was helpful, let us know. As for the vowels in general, I found that just opening the mouth is more, sorry, I found that just opening the mouth more helps a lot. Basically, for both consonants and vowels, using more energy overall seemed to work for me. These worked well for me in the beginning, but as I improved, I started noticing more exceptions. There are always exceptions, though the general patterns still helped a ton. Yeah. And then he said one more thing in this voice note. I was kind of in a rush and a lot of words aren't enunciated properly from what I heard. That's okay. No, I really like this. And this is something very common for English learners as well is they'll say the vowels quickly where they'll say, "Oh, there's a dog," but you can say dog. Like, don't be afraid to really say the vowel sounds, pronounce the vowel sounds. It feels weird, but just to be able to feel it. And then if you don't want to like exaggerate it, you don't have to, but just it's really important to exaggerate it, I think, in the beginning, just to get a feel for what the vowel sounds and all of the sounds feel like and to get comfortable with it. So I like that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to his voice note again, but